Trinidad and Tobago, I've always believed that in life there's something called karma. There's something, life, politics, there's karma. Everything that you do comes back to you. You give the world good, it comes back to you in good. You give it bad, it comes back to you in bad. You give it evil, it comes back to you in evil. And our religious scriptures, the Quran, the Bible, the Injil, the Torah, all of these books talk about that. The Hindu scriptures, all of it talk about that. Karma. I say all of that for this. Brian Manning, what you are experiencing in San Fernando East is karma. You sat back and watched the former Keith Christopher Rowley manipulate the democratic process. You didn't say anything. You saw him put things in place, go against all democratic norms to install Stuart Useless Young as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. You did and said nothing. Not only that, you allowed a man who belittled, humiliated, insulted your father, one of the few people in the PNM who had a sense of decency. Because I've always said, Patrick Manning was a decent man. In my experience with him, he was a decent man. And maybe you don't know how decent your father was. So let me give you an example of what Patrick Augustus Manning, how decent he was. In 1994, after 8 years, close to 8 years or maybe 10 of being blacklisted by the Football Association, the TTFA, after meetings with Jack Warner in Switzerland, I came back to play. I was approached after we reached the final of the Caribbean, the Shell Cup in 1994. The team approached me with a list of complaints against the TTFA. Money not being paid in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. For months, these boys wouldn't be paid. And they approached me because in the 3 games I had played, I had done extremely well. The public realized that all the propaganda and bullshit of Gally Cummins and Oliver Camps and they was just that, propaganda and crap. We had the team singing, looking good. So the team came to me and told me their complaints. You know, Captain, this is the situation, we haven't been paid. And my honest answer to them was, hey, what? I don't want to be involved. I now coming off 8 years of being blacklisted by the TTFA because of this idiot Gally Cummins and Oliver Camps and them. And Jack Warner to extent too. He didn't listen to them at first, but he ended up listening to them. But then Jack Warner is a man, in the end he's always, so somehow he ended up listening to people in FIFA. Anyway, Jack Warner came up and inquired to the team why we weren't going to play in the final against Martinique. And I told him in front of the team, as well as Gerald Nixon, because he singled us out because we had already been paid, as he normally did with the professionals. I told Jack Warner that we will not play unless these people were being paid. We can't play by ourselves, Nixon and I. He left. And subsequently we heard that he would be sending the Prime Minister of the country at the time, Patrick Manning. Patrick Manning came into our hotel amidst a lot of fanfare, blue lights, all that, you know, came into the hotel, and I understood that he called for me to come down. So I went down. Of course, I had some loyal soldiers with me at the time. Until now, Ansel Elcock, Alvin Thomas, Dexter Peck Francis, who couldn't do anything because these guys were in the army. They couldn't say or do anything, but he came down and they listened. So all of them were there. Let me tell you how decent your father was, Brian Manning, and why karma is coming back to bite you in your ass. He came, Mr. Naked. I said, yes, Prime Minister. He said, are you aware that you and your team are prepared to keep King Pele waiting in the airport? I said to him, Prime Minister, can I just show you something? He said, yes. I took out a list of the players who haven't been paid in months and their families who were waiting, hadn't been paid in months, couldn't buy groceries. And I showed him the list. And I told him, Prime Minister, unless these players are paid before the game, King Pele will have to wait in that airport. Mr. Manning looked at the list, Brian Manning. Your father looked at the list, knew that this was not right, and said to me in front of these players, I think the TTFA has a lot of problems. Give me back the list, and left. Within an hour, or maybe 2 hours, within 2 hours, TTFA came in with a bag of money and paid every single player. As you know, we went on to beat Martinique 7-2 in probably the greatest final played by a Trinidad team in its history. Kenny Joseph was the coach. I tell you all of this, Brian Manning, to tell you your father was a decent man who realized that something was wrong and that he would not put us under any pressure to play in a game, whether Pele was there, whether whoever was there. He knew that these families needed to be paid. Contrast that with you, Brian Manning, who allowed a miscreant, a race baiter, a man who has never done anything for the black communities of Trinidad and Tobago, to insult and humiliate your father, and then go and work for that man and with that man. And now all his people crowding you out. That's what they're doing. You being crowded out by your own description to leave that constituency. That is what you call karma. Had you taken a stance against Keith Christopher Rowley and his manipulations of democracy in trying to put Stuart, and not trying, imposing Stuart Useless Young on Trinidad and Tobago as a prime minister, which our black communities rejected out of hand. That is what you call karma. So I'm not meddling in PNM politics. I'm meddling and pointing out to you how integrity matters, Brian Manning, and how it's important to stand up for your father, who was essentially, despite all the corruption, he was essentially a decent man. I just wanted to give you some education, edify you, young blood, that go and organize your party. Go and let them know that the former looking to come back and put Penelope Beckles out. Maybe if you had stood up for Penelope Beckles in Tobago, you would not be going through this hell. But karma, as we all know, is a bitch. A little lesson for you, Trinidad and Tobago, and for Brian Manning. For everybody, Trinidad and Tobago, love in your house, all the time.